Make sure you set the audio so if Paul watches and has something to say, it'll come to there and not. Yeah, if you want to. Set up, okay. Now we can go back to whatever. Radio. Okay, so today is March 27th. It's 5:39 p.m. and we are going to start this one meeting that I set with Planning Commission and Town Council. We talked about at the last Town Council meeting, we talked about setting a joint meeting with Town Council and Planning Commission to talk about the rules of how to run the meetings. But that's not what this is. This is about working out what we're going, setting goals and prioritizing those goals. And we'll do the meeting procedure later, another meeting, but we're not doing both of those in this, which you can move on. And I'm not interested in being here that long. Okay, so what I wanted to do first, on your blue tab, this is just for, sorry, we don't have one. Those of us on town council, you'll have to look over onto your neighbor. I only put these in planning commission folder. Because this was, we all had this in our town council meeting folder, the planning commission rules of procedure. We all had that in our meeting folder. But, I wanted to give all planning commissioners a copy of this. This was done in 2016 when Bruce Densley was mayor. And they adopted some rules of procedure for how to run planning commission meetings. And these are still the rules that are in effect at this time. And I pointed out at the bottom of page 1 that both the town clerk and the planning commission chair can put things on the agenda. It is not just one person who sets the agenda. More than one person puts things on the agenda. And then and it doesn't say this here, but if town council sends something over to go on the agenda, it goes on the agenda. So it can come from town council, it can come from the town clerk, it can come from the chair. So I just want to make sure everybody understood that. And then if you look at the next page, I highlighted in yellow so that you guys can read what it says. And that's what's in the will be as we have our next joint meeting and we work on meeting procedures. You guys will also have some input on how you guys might want to change this.
I don't see the second highlighted, Jean, I'm sorry.
The second page.
Page 2.
Role and commission.
Huh?
Okay, it's not highlighted.
Oh, you know what? I bet you
It's okay, you don't need to highlight.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I think I kept the copy that was for you and I gave you my copy. Okay. So that's all I wanted to say on this topic. Was just that so that you guys see. And then you have copies so that whenever we have our next meeting where we talk about maybe changing the rules of procedure, you have one to make changes to, and then we're gonna try to make the procedures consistent with town council meeting and planning commission, so that there's not really a whole lot of difference in how the meetings are done. So, before I go on, and so this thing here that was on front of everyone's folder, this request for town council action, I want to go over. This is the cover sheet that Larry called and asked me about. Cover sheet, said he wants to do a cover sheet on something. I said, where do you have a cover sheet? All you have to do is pull it up, fill it out. Darby asking questions. And so Darlene and I had talked about some sort of cover sheet from town council to planning commission, explaining. I said, okay, well, we can just take this and see what changes planning commission might like to see if this was the reverse, and it was coming from town council. What would you guys like to see on a cover sheet from an ordinance from the town council? Okay, for example, This first, purple one that says emergency ordinance, and we're gonna talk about this again in a minute. We passed this emergency ordinance. I just copied one page out of the whole 5-page ordinance. And I wrote the date. February 1st, 2024 is when we had the emergency meeting and passed this. And then the highlighted portion said, we are directing the planning commission to hold public hearings and make its recommendation on these amendments. And we have a deadline. And so what I'm asking is if you guys would have liked to kind of cover letter like this on top of this for us to send to planning commission. And give it a deadline, maybe we put a code on a thing on here for deadlines.
So this form would be used between the council and the planning commission and back and forth. It's not for the public.
No.
Okay, just
This is just for us,
Clarify.
and so I created this form years and years ago when I was on town council.
It's very convenient. It was really convenient when I was in planning and zoning, because you could give why. And then by the time that the council, we got it, we could read it and know, oh, this is why. And I think adding a vote would be nice. Your vote count would be nice.
So we can amend this, okay?
Right.
So
That's,
we can add vote count, anything else?
how are these tracked?
Well, we've never tracked them before.
Okay, when you get to it, I have a suggestion.
Go ahead.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with Microsoft Forms,
Mhm.
but we can create this identical form, do whatever we want with it. And what happens is you share it with whoever you want to share it with. It can be all just within your organization. And then your responses are recorded and documented, date stamped, user stamped.
So what
With
kind
all
of,
the fields into a spreadsheet.
so what
that
kind of
it's
comments
tracked.
are you imagining, are you envisioning that somebody might make with something like this?
I'm not envisioning anything, I'm just
Okay.
saying, just having a digital
I
version
will-
instead of all these papers to keep track of because when you get this form, then what are you going to do?
It would go, in my opinion, we get the ordinance from the town council, from the planning commission, and then I suppose when it would get scanned into SharePoint and attached to the ordinance that's in SharePoint
The cover sheet.
as a cover sheet, and we would see it that way. I don't necessarily see this.
It's just
Like
a,
a
it's a
Google form.
tracking mechanism, and it's also a way to manage the workload and say, just for example, say you got a whole bunch of requests at once. Then you can go, oh my gosh, what's at the top of the priority list?
Mhm.
And you can look at it and you can track it and say, okay, we have to pick 3 out of the 10 or whatever. And so you've got this whole list sitting in front of you and you can prioritize it that way. You can also track so that, if a subject comes up for a particular meeting, but it has to get moved on to,
So we would
Next month,
show.
you would be able to say, oh, we need to go back to this. They submitted this on this date. We didn't take any action. We still need to follow up on it. Just a tracking mechanism.
So we talked about adding vote and a way to track the work.
and you would not have to put this in the comment summary. That would come from our public hearing, but it would be very useful for me when you want us to act,
As town council.
have kind of like, what's the intent, what's the why behind this?
Okay,
That's where you could put a timeline in.
okay, so this is,
It could be
if
backgrounds and findings.
it's P and D, we're asking for the vote count. If we're amending this for town council, then we would have,
like justification,
Yeah,
like why we're asking you.
Yeah.
Not just
Just
the
the
why,
background.
the why, we want to know why.
Yeah, what are you trying to
Not
say
just,
to
hey,
change
because on this date,
What is
this
your
date, you want to
vision
know
for this?
why do you want me to do it.
What is your vision for this structure?
Not just the background.
That could be done.
But, Darlene, don't you think it's important to have public comments on?
Oh, it is.
But the town council doesn't hear a lot of public or.
I know, that's why,
I understand on our part.
right, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But on the one they send to us.
Oh, yeah.
I like
Got
To me, it's important to know what is your vision as a town council, what is.
So instead of going
Your why.
statistically,
What's the
you
context?
want to know,
Yeah.
because how do
so,
something simple, not
Yeah.
facts you want.
Because then anything we do can You can't hit a target, you don't know what the target is.
Okay, so the citizen comment summary, you were asking about that. That, of course, is because when it comes from planning,
Correct, of course.
we have to know what
And that's
comments are
exactly-
made in the public
And
hearing.
that's,
They don't need to know it in
But
there.
when it comes from us,
that's what I'm saying.
it's not necessarily that there's going to be any citizen comments unless
There
I
might
want
be,
somebody in the
unless
town
you got-
council meeting to stand up and say
Yeah.
something.
Unless you got letters or something like that.
Yeah.
It might come from an open forum item, so I guess you could leave it there, but it wouldn't be as extensive as that of a public hearing.
Okay, so you want to work on the form, the tracking form?
I've already created one.
Oh,
I've created
you can just modify it for the whole.
I changed it as many times.
And this fiscal impact, I don't know that we've ever used that. We could probably take that out.
If applicable, I guess you can say.
I think it's important that we think along those lines, what's it gonna cost, even if it's just what's it gonna cost the town to implement this.
Okay, all right?
Even if we don't have an exact number.
Yeah, and we can say no, but
Yeah.
if we know some, like, okay, they're gonna need another clerk for this permitting process, or they're gonna, so that's gonna be a salary.
That would be a fiscal one. Okay, yeah, okay. All right, so that was why I had this here was because of, Darlene's suggestion of some sort of a procedure going the other way. So that's what this is for. Okay, so does that address your question about communication, or is there
It
still
does,
more?
it just like, if it doesn't move on the page, then it's a better chance that we all hear the same message, or vice versa. I really like this one.
Okay, so, so all my plan was here today was to go over this where I typed up everything that, were people's ideas, and then I have blank things here from Misty, Marcy, and Larry, and as we're talking, if you guys have ideas, like they come to your head, things you want to work on, write it down here, and then we'll talk about it. And so, the plan is, I do not want to discuss these in detail at all. All I want to say is, this is what I mean, this is what I mean, this is what I mean. That's it. And when we get to, Bronwyn or Doris, what? I'm on this thing that all the pages where I listed. Boom. Yeah, but I've got 5 or 6 pages here that are equal from everybody. Unfortunately, what I didn't do was number the page 1, page 2, page 3. So then I didn't. You'll just have to go by ahead, you know. people
That's
talk.
10 points off. Jane.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, anyway. I don't want to go in detail. I just want, if there's anything that does need some detailed discussion, we'll talk about it, but hopefully not. And then we'll figure out what we think is first priority, second priority, that kind of thing. But I can already tell you right now what's number 1. On my page here, this is G Crowds, go down to the next to bottom one, which is the emergency ordinance about the square footage that we had that emergency meeting. And so this is the first purple tag that I have here for everybody. So this is supposed to be on the agenda every single planning commission meeting until you guys get it done. He called and had a fit because you guys are not anywhere on this. You guys have not started on it, and he wants it on the agenda, and he wants to know why you're not having a real discussion. This thing could have been done in 6 weeks. All it is a simple ordinance. And all we need to know is 4,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet. You guys do some research, figure out what you think is a reasonable amount as a square footage.
What are you trying to fix? Like, my house is bigger than those limitations you have already, and I don't think it's that big a house, so.
I know, but we have, some really big houses that have plans to come in. And we have issues with, the size of septic systems that are appropriate for a house of a certain size, and that is mentioned right here. In this thing, right above this, A, B, and C, we talk about the septic, how many water connections are being used, how many people are in the house. I mean, this is why I said you guys decide what's reasonable. And we just chose 3,500 square feet. I believe that you've done some research and that this was what was on the county website. Is that what it was?
Washington County has and looked at these in unincorporated areas.
And, okay, and so that's where we came up with this just for the temporary ordinance. And I've made it clear to anybody who's called and asked, well, oh my God, 35, I said, that's just the temporary. That's not what the final is going to be. It could be 4, it could be 5. I don't know what it's going to be. That's, you guys come up with a suggestion. But to fix this, to do an ordinance like this, I could probably write one in an hour. It just doesn't take that long to do an ordinance that fits this. And the only thing, I could write an ordinance in an hour, and the only thing that would be left blank is what's the square footage. So this could have been done in 6 weeks. And so because we called this an emergency ordinance and it's not been appearing for you guys to work on, that gives the impression to the public that this is not an emergency. And we passed it as an emergency and it needs to be worked on.
And is there a deadline?
Yes.
Yeah, 7:30, okay.
No, well, actually, July 30th is the end of the 180 days, but our planning, our town council
Right,
meeting,
has to
which
go,
we
right.
need to vote on this, is July 16th, and you guys need to have a public hearing before that.
Right.
And you need to have an ordinance before that. And we really should have this for the town council to vote on in June. I'm just saying that's the 180 days.
Okay.
We really need to have the town council vote on it in June in case we don't like it and send it back. We need to have, this needs to be worked on. This is number 1.
Well, it is being worked on. And
But it's
it's been on our, working agenda, but I don't think it's on our.
But we need evidence, just showing it on the agenda. What do you have so far to show us that it's being worked on? So, Heath was upset about this and he asked if he needs to come to our town planning commission meetings from now on, and I asked him to come.
So are you trying to eliminate big houses, overuse of septic, or too many water connections?
All
And what's your issue with big houses, I guess is my question. If I had a 40-acre estate and I wanted a 10,000 square foot house, I'd be upset if I.
Well, this is where what we've talked about before is a percentage of the property. And the way to do this is not to necessarily go with the square footage of the house, but to say on a piece of property that's this much, you can say, let's just say 50% can be covered with a building. And that would include all buildings. And then it doesn't matter how much your land is. You could have 40 acres and 20 acres of it could be covered with a house. You could have 10 acres and 5 acres could be covered with a house. The best way to do it, really and truly, is not necessarily square footage, but percentage of the property that can be covered with the structure. That's probably a better way to do it.
And I still don't understand why we want to limit that. If you want to limit houses that require bigger than 1,500 gallon septic tanks, and I understand that, and you wouldn't have to put it's based on bedrooms, so you could have a 10,000 square foot house with 2 bedrooms and it
You
would
could,
be under the 1,500.
you could, depending on how big a piece of property that you have.
We'll talk about this before our meeting, our work meeting, or we'll go over this exact.
Okay, that's fine, that's
I
fine.
will have a template with you. Okay?
So this was an emergency ordinance. Was it to prevent somebody who had a plan for 10,000 square foot house coming in, or is this only for the vacation rentals? Is that why
We can't eliminate, we can't say this applies only to vacation rentals. That's discriminatory. We can't do that. It applies to all or it applies to none.
so limiting the septic size?
You're not gonna eliminate the septic size as long as
No,
you're
no,
on septic.
limiting the septic size.
Limiting,
Yeah.
yes.
So I don't think that's the best plan because we don't really have any control over septic design. And if you say you can only have a 1,500 square or 1,500 gallon septic system, that's
going to be kind of difficult for the town to enforce in a way.
Except as Ash Creek will.
Well, I think.
Well,
the health
and maybe they
department
will.
So anyway, I did not want us to get into the real detail here. All I wanted to point out was this is number one because we passed it as an emergency and there's a deadline. That's why that's number one. And then I will tell you what I think is number two, and I will explain why, and then we'll go through these. Number two is actually what I call on here, on the same page. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 from the bottom. Says assignment I gave April. Okay. And I gave April an assignment to come up with a justification for why we have 1 acre lots in town. Right now, the justification for the 1 acre lots in town is because of our contract with the Water Conservancy District that limits us to 1 home per acre. When we joined the revised water pooling agreement, that limitation, that justification goes away, and then we have no justification for why we're limited to 1 home per acre. Therefore, I asked April to look at all the wastewater studies we have. We have a groundwater protection study that's supposed to be getting underway, but that'll take a year for them to complete that. So we can't wait for that. We need a justification now for what our limitation is, and so April has been assigned as the engineer who can read all these engineering studies and comprehend the language. I gave April that job. And so when she comes up with that, what I imagine we're gonna do is, we'll go in each zone, right before where it says it's 1 acre, we'll have a paragraph that's gonna say why. And then we'll just go in and put that in every zone to justify why the limitation. And although I said that was number two, it may take 2 or 3 months before April has what's ready for us. But it's whenever it's done, whenever April's done with that, that's gonna be priority number one whenever she gets it done. Okay, so the rest of this we can all just talk about and, prioritize.
I have a question.
Yes,
How are you, I want you to explain how you're ranking priority.
what I think.
Is there
well,
categories or?
No, the rest of this, we're gonna discuss among ourselves what we think is most important and why we think it's most important. The only reason I want to point out this was because of the emergency thing that we passed. And this other thing, which is, that we're about to lose the justification for the 1 acre lots. Those are two, and the rest of this, we're gonna work it out.
And that's why I was wondering if maybe we got together and established a ranking. And how, just, April, you'll understand, just like capital improvements did to rank, and you're on capital
Yeah,
improvements.
yeah, we
as
have
well.
each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's scoring,
Yeah.
so depending on what the need is, and there's all these different categories, and then you sum up
Well, what's gonna
all
happen?
of the scores, and then that tells you where it falls into the priority level.
Hold on. That took us probably months to go through on capital improvements committee to put such a thing in place and then go through everything and prioritize. This, we don't have that kind of time to do that. But some of this is purely, for example, tourists are about to arrive. They'll be coming in. There's things that tourists are gonna have issues that when tourists come in, that we want to address right now. Or we know that there's people that are coming in that want to do development, and we know that this needs to be taken care of now. So we can't take too long.
Right, so you could apply a time sensitivity ranking
I
saying
think that's
if
probably the
it
best
needs to
way.
happen immediately, then you give it 5 stars.
I think that's probably the best way, is the time sensitivity would be the first.
That would be one of the ranking, and, you know, then there's
Yeah.
environmental impact or resource allocation. Just
Okay.
wondering if you have.
I did not, I figured we'd work it out as we're talking. But I don't want us to take a whole lot of time, like I said, I don't want to go into detail on any of what these are. I want us to come up with, ranking numbers. April already did that with hers. She listed hers, she's got 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. She did a good job on that. And, so for example, even for 3 months, her number one thing is what I told you guys is number one, which was the size restriction on family dwellings in all zones, which is this emergency, ordinance that's passed. And sure enough, she's got that as number one. So I will tell you, since the way we have these, I got mine listed first, I'll just tell you what my issues are. And then we'll go from, and then Dark, the way I have these, we'll just go in order, okay? And this is just the way I entered them over, I've been collecting this over the past year. So none of these are something I came up with in the past week, this is over a year. So the ordinance rate slope development, I'm like, somebody came and talked to me about slope development, and I wrote that down. Couldn't tell you any more than that. Somebody came to me about it.
I sent you a thing on the overlay that Washington City has a couple of years ago. Is that wrong?
I don't think it was that, but it might be.
And I started working on that, but it wasn't ever on our list of priorities. Well, it's starting to get on, working its way up on our list of priorities.
I don't see this one as hugely, in order of importance, I just have it written down.
And for me, the only reason it was at any order before was that there's a development going up on one of our ridges now. And it sounds like they're doing exactly what the ordinance would say, they're moving the buildings back, keeping them on.
Well, that isn't slope, that's just on top of the mesa. Are you talking about the short-term rental being right above us on the
Yes.
mesa? See, I don't call that slope development, I'm talking about slope.
Right,
People
well,
wanna try to develop on a slope.
Ordinance
we need to
covers all
stop.
that.
We used to say
so
no,
the overlay covers all that, building on the slope, scarring the slope,
okay?
and then when you're on top of the slope where you can build, so you can't, you know, have the heights go back if you.
Okay. All right, so,
Comment on that, and that is that I know it's not a priority because we've got a lot of priorities, but living in St. George, you know, in the past 30+ years, they really had a problem, when things started to boom there. Landowners who'd owned land for generations, you know, not liking what town was telling them they couldn't do, and starting to take cats, going up the side of hills. These were hills surrounding St. George, you know, to get to the masons and make sure that nobody was telling them what to do. So I think there is a priority to this. If we want to develop what we want to look like down the road before it becomes an emergency.
yeah, I don't want any of these to be something that becomes an emergency, other than this one that we did earlier. So I don't know where we're gonna put this one, that one we'll come back to. The ordinance rate lighting, I have particularly string lights, it's mainly because of all the string lights in town that are not shielded, and they need to be shielded and downward, and, so that's why I considered that one a priority, because we're about to have tourist season, everybody's gonna be coming, the businesses are gonna be, all we have to do is look at George's Restaurant with all the lights, and they all need to be shielded and downlit. And so whenever we do this one, I would like to see a deadline by which everybody has to get rid of the variable string lights and convert them to downlit. So we'll want that on there. That should be, I put that one higher on the list.
Yeah.
Because you've got a dark sky ordinance and that can somewhere be in there.
Yeah.
Ordinance rate zoning administrator duties. We need to go through, chapter 2 that has the zone administrator duties and change those, which we talked about at the last council meeting. Noise ordinance, because we're about to start renting this church again, and we've got complaints all the time about the loud music. And, so I would like, and I've had people contacting me about, since, George has had outdoor music in his place, people contacting me, they can hear the music in their house, blah, 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 what are they gonna do about it? So this needs to be all encompassed in a noise ordinance. We just had somebody here looking at this place to rent it just as we came in to start the meeting, that we're looking to rent this for a wedding. And one of the things I told them, I said, you're in a residential neighborhood, gotta keep in mind, though, can't have loud music out here because you're in a residential neighborhood. And I have had weddings where even at my house, I can hear the music. And I can walk outside and hear the thump, 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 and it's like, oh my gosh, and look where I am. And I could hear, I couldn't imagine the people around here. And we've had people who had to leave their house.
Depending on where the wind blows, I can hear the music here. up
At
in
your
my
house? And we've had neighbors around here who've had to leave. They couldn't stay in their house and they had to leave.
And I think when we put some decibel limits on it, we also should think about clock limits as well, because in the summer, you have light until 9:30, 10 o'clock, and you have to think about when.
So you kind of quiet time ordinance.
Yeah, we have a limitation of 10, quiet time at 10, I think right now.
Residential.
Because they were going and I was getting videos and pictures and recordings every time they're really loud. And they'll be 9:55 and I'm getting a text, they're still here, and at 10 o'clock, wham, they stop. They shut right off at 10.
Does our code, I haven't looked, cover construction noise?
No, that's coming up. Valerie had that on her thing, and I don't know if that would be in the same ordinance or if we should put that in a different ordinance. That's something to talk about, to plan. Chapter 30, I have excise chapter 30, get rid of it altogether. And that's what Paul wants. He wants it gone all together, not revise it, don't add stuff to it, we want it gone.
Yes, 30.
Chapter 30, that's that chart.
All the uses.
That's that chart with all the uses, and the reason why is you can make one change, one error on that chart, and you have just ruined our codes because they're inconsistent. And they have to be perfectly in line. Or we have an ordinance that falls, our ordinances fall apart. You cannot have an error, and the one that's in there right now is error ridden. And so it needs to, my personal opinion, it needs to go away so that no one in the future can go in and tweak one little thing and then you've ruined all our ordinances. And it makes them unenforceable. And so that's why I think charts should go away. I know charts are nice, but people can have charts on their desk and the town council, the clerks can have a chart right there that they look at, but it doesn't need to be in the code. That's my opinion. And I know that's whole.
And as a user, I feel differently. I like the quick reference of a chart and.
You can have a chart.
If we,
but it doesn't
I think
need
we
to
can
be
work on
in the
making it accurate instead of eliminating it, just because, how many real estate listings you see when a commercial piece of property where it has a chart that says, here's all the acceptable uses, and
We can create a chart. I don't think it needs to be in the code, because all it needs is the next mayor and the next planning commission to come in and tweak one thing, and bam, there goes all the consistency in your ordinances, and they're unenforceable. And you either expect that you're gonna have a planning commission and a town council and a mayor that is really gonna wanna make sure that everything is in line and that it's solid, but it takes one thing and the whole thing falls apart. And I don't want to give anybody the option of being able to do that. I would like things to be clear.
the wording in there now says that chapter 30 overrides everything.
And all of that's gonna come out.
We can reverse that.
When we excise chapter 30, every one of those little paragraphs is gonna get taken out. I'll write the ordinance if I have to, but I know Paul and I are both, like, we want to come.
You're saying leave the chapter and remove the language?
Yes. Or, and every other chapter say that this
Overrides chapter 30.
right.
Okay, we could do the reverse, okay?
I still like the idea of charts living outside the ordinance. I'm not opposed to charts. I understand.
Yeah, I don't care where you live.
I don't think the charts were at the beginning of each chapter instead of this this overview chart that we have in chapter 30. But we do a chart for each chapter at the beginning of it.
What if you had like commercial? Permitted uses? Or
Right, like that,
allowable
that's,
uses?
what- yeah, we're on the
And
same
each-
page, yeah,
No, but it's just a list.
yeah. But
So
I mean,
so it's in
yeah,
the ordinance, not in the chart.
well, in the beginning, it's a ready reference.
Yes, we're not going into much more detail on this. Yes.
Yes, it is, I agree.
There's some other information in 30 minutes, we can put it somewhere out, there's ways to work this out, and we do need to make sure everything's layered, so there's never. just
And
one-
that's fine, all we need to do is get rid of third out. You can go in and add other uses into the other zones all you want, but it doesn't have to be in conjunction with getting rid of chapter 30.
Right,
we
but
can
the
add-
problem is we have to find a place to designate our zones and our use designations, and that can 32, but we can put it somewhere else, so whatever, we can work it out.
You guys, you'll have to explain that to me, because I'll get it, yeah, I'll get it, okay. We need to create a workforce housing zone. I would like a new zone that's workforce housing, or in fact, I hate the term workforce housing, maybe we could come up with a better term. Affordable, attainable, moderate income, whatever you want to call it, but something that is not luxury homes. The ordinary people that work like Larry, you were just talking about homes for your employees. And, so we need something, we need a zone for those kind of houses. And I think we should work it, it's not rural residential, it's not residential, it's not agricultural, it's some other zone.
Blue collar.
Blue collar, there we go.
This is
It's
an
not-
issue of all resort communities, and some of them have got, if you build a commercial development, you've got to provide a certain percentage.
Yes, and some do that, but right now, there's been issues going on in the state legislature where they have been trying to make, and this is why we have to justify our 1 acre home, 1 acre per home, is they're trying to pass a law that, requires us to have 8 homes per acre. And how are you gonna do that?
So-
Well, unless it's townhomes.
Without sewer.
With it. Yeah, we have to be exactly, so that's why April's working on this, I've given her that work assignment.
I have a question. Really sorry. Can you give us whatever you get me to and require us to look for housing and
They did not pass a law on workforce housing, they tried and tried and tried, and then failed. All right,
They passed several things that
all kinds of stuff.
6 to an acre.
If you go to our, mid-year conference, it's April 17th, 18th, 19th, they will have an entire section that is nothing but telling you what all the new laws are. They do that every April. They have a whole session on new laws.
Are we all going or?
Whoever is signed
Whoever
up,
wants.
the only, we'll see, April, Darlene,
I
and
didn't.
Larry are the only people.
Where do we
You
sign
didn't
up?
sign up, Valerie, sorry, I'm sorry.
Is it on
Val?
the league's website?
It's on the league's website, but I sent out an email to everybody.
You didn't send it to me?
17th, 18th, and 19th of April.
I
I sent it
didn't get
to everybody. Okay. Valerie signed up. I will resend it. Valerie signed up, Darlene signed up, and Larry signed up. I sent it to everybody.
I remember seeing it, I just.
You saw it.
It's when I work.
She said. Okay, then there's a slumlord in town, I'm just wondering what can we do? Is there any kind of ordinance? There may be no kind of ordinance we can pass, but it's just, the question is, can we do something? That's all I'm asking. Okay,
When you define slumlord,
I will define a slumlord if that helps you, but I can point out where it is and figure it out.
I'll tell you later.
well, I could probably point to some things that I might have thought of, but I'm just wondering if there's
Yes, there's some.
a definition.
A slumlord is somebody they rent out their property, it's in very bad shape, they make no effort to keep it up to code of any sort, and we get complaints and complaints and complaints in the town hall of the people saying, oh my gosh, look at this, they just bring us pictures, and we're like, is there anything we can do about this person? What can we do? Can we set some kind of code? And the person ended up moving away. But there's somebody else in that place now, we were trying to shut it down before somebody else could rent it, but we couldn't get it done in time, and now somebody else is.
We have some code about how you take care of your property. We still enforce it.
This is, well, if we had code enforcement officer, but we sent you guys a code enforcement officer ordinance where you guys put for public hearing, and it's going to be on your public hearing coming up, because we want the code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
I wanna hire the guy, I can't advertise for it until we have a code enforcement officer ordinance. So everything's waiting on having a code enforcement officer ordinance passed that has to come from planning commission.
This is one, the previous one, or this revisiting.
Yes, all I did was I took it and I changed the number, I changed the date, it's exact word for word the same words. Okay, so, yes, we
Is
can
that on
have
your
that. It's,
I don't see it on your list.
it's not on my list, because it's already on your, it's on your, it's already,
Oh, okay.
it's on your public hearing notice. So, but the slumlord is different from a code enforcement officer who goes in. If the people with the slumlord, if they come in and file a complaint, then the code enforcement officer goes to go check it out. But we should be able to just drive down the road and see this. You can see this. I mean, you just drive down and you go, oh my gosh, how can anybody even live in that place? It's horrible.
Would that be something that would go under design standards beautification?
I don't know. I don't know that it would, because it's not a beautification. The people, it's maintenance, because they have tried to do some landscaping around, they're trying to make it beautiful, but I'm like, how, it's putting lipstick on a pig, it's a pig.
So our contacts with White Counties might give us some insight on that.
So, that's fine, but I'm just going over with you.
Remember, guys, we need to remember there's a difference between, because like Kevin was saying, that we do have some beautification ordinances. We need to keep in mind that this is specifically for people renting homes.
Yes, this
Right.
is
Not for residents.
Not for
or
residents.
has
This is-
one that's not by.
That's correct, it is as somebody who is renting out their property.
Quarters in our, and my husband's one. There's some that are in chapter 16, by the way.
Chapter 60 is just short-term rental and residential hosting, that's got nothing to do with someone renting out their house to a long-term renter.
You'll have to. Oh, never mind, no, it does, but I'll show you. It's part of enforcement, it has. Never mind.
Okay, we'll see your ordinance and raise you guys know.
But use the form.
So, I have a new lodging from commercial, I believe, you guys might be working on something like that already, okay? It's, this make outside water a requirement for a conditional use permit if the use uses more than one share per acre. That's one share, that should be one ERU, not the word share. That's road share, not ERU.
And we used to have that in our.
Yes, we used to have that in our code. This next section, I could not come up, I was looking for the word occupation through, I have the old Lulu on my computer from 2017. And, I was searching for the word occupation. I have here no work vehicles or other evidence of work on residential property. I could swear, because this was in the code before. And I swear it used the word not work, but occupation.
Home
And-
occupation.
No, it's not a home occupation. We're talking about people who have, worked elsewhere, but they bring home their truck and they park it on the property, or they've got all this stuff that they use in their business, and it's sitting there on the property, and we used to have a code that said you can't do that.
What about on the street?
Not that,
In front of,
that's, but this is what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
You know exactly what
I
I'm
know
referring to. Okay, and then the next thing was penalties for running a business in a residential neighborhood. That's not a big, so to me, the work vehicles and penalties for running a business in a residential neighborhood, those are further down on the priority list. They're not top priority as far as I'm concerned.
I have one it's similar to that. It's industrial type businesses in a residential.
Okay, so have you written that down on your,
I have a spreadsheet of all my stuff.
okay,
The ordinance sort of describes the home occupation, and it's very limited, you can't have customers, you can't have.
Right, we're not talking, these are not people that have a home occupation. These are people that have a job somewhere else,
And
and they're bringing their stuff home. There used to be somebody who doesn't live here anymore, but there used to be someone up the road here who drove an 18-wheeler, and he would park it over in front of the church all the time. And you could drive down the road, there was this 18-wheeler parked in front of the church, and he'd start it up early in the morning, and it's like, no.
There's a lot of people that their employer provides them with a company vehicle and they get to take it home, and sometimes they are towing a trailer, flatbeds,
And if I
cargo.
parked it in my pasture instead of out on the.
Yeah, and so it's just, it's allowed, they're not operating a business, they're employed by somebody and they're just,
Because
they kind of work
position
to
together.
home agreement, it's just like the town truck, it goes home with.
But we
whoever
had,
working from
we
the town.
had an ordinance before that said, you can't do this. And I was trying to find it in the old Hulu, because I have a copy of that old Hulu in my computer, and I could have sworn the word occupation as opposed to work was what was used, but I searched occupation, all I pulled up was the chaplain home occupation.
I think we're all
Yeah.
probably agreeing on the same
Same
thing, it's
thing.
just being careful about
The word.
clarifying.
Where we're telling, we're gonna cross where it becomes a complete dictatorship instead of us just.
Yeah, right.
Any management.
yeah, I don't want any contractor to not be able to park his truck in his driveway. It's got a car sign on, or a sign on the side that says
Right.
Joe's Roofing, and I mean, what do? You can't force this guy to go rent a commercial space because he's a,
If he's bringing, if he's driving a town truck home, that's fine. The guy who was driving an 18-wheeler and parking it up here, nobody drives an 18-wheeler as their work vehicle.
I know.
Give me a break.
Being clear
On
and
the street, we have a
He
street,
parked it on the street.
well, so we can easily build it on the street, that's easy, it's not private property.
That's like saying the guy who drives the pickup truck that says Jones Paint
But in
Glass can't
But
drive.
in the same breath, in the same breath.
Somebody tried to say that Larry, the previous Larry, could not bring his vehicle home that said, Zion Outdoor, whatever, Safari. And they tried to say he was violating this order. We're like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the stucco guys.
So like, there's that, like, that someone drives to.
More specific.
Well, they live in the agricultural zone.
Well, but some of them that help with that do not.
Okay,
I'm just-
well,
I'm just
I do
pointing out
not want to get into detail.
Yeah.
All I want to say is this is the topic, we're not detailed.
but we'll have to get
We'll
into
be here till
detail
midnight
sometime
if we're gonna start detail.
with you, so we know what you're trying to accomplish, so.
Okay, so then the next I have, this is a question that really is, this is more of an attorney question. Would it be possible for the town to use eminent domain to acquire the easement through Zion's Edge for the access to BLM? That really, I don't know why I put that on here, that's an attorney question. Then I have, we need to revisit the short-term rental overlay for Zion's Edge, because, I'm hearing chatter that even though we pulled off the 12 acres that are Zion's Edge and said that's the short-term rental overlay, that when we passed the ordinance, we talked about the parcel number. And then the 12-acre parcel that is Zion's Edge got pulled off, and they went and got a different parcel number at the county when they went and recorded their plat. Got a different parcel number. Then, once they recorded the final plat, every one of the 10 homes has a different parcel number. Meanwhile, the ordinance that says short-term rental overlay still has on it the original parcel number, which still has 40 acres back there where they want to put homes.
So you can't get.
And they are thinking, they're arguing, we got short-term rental overlay. I'm like, no, you didn't. We have to revisit that ordinance.
It goes with their final plat, so if there's no plat on it.
I understand what you're saying. I'm telling you what they're arguing. We need to, all I want to do is go back and look at the ordinance and make sure that it is not going to allow them to make the argument that they get short-term rentals.
Can you update the ordinance? So
Yes.
this was done in.
Yes, we can.
Done, right.
No, we need to go back and look at the ordinance where we granted them that ordinance, the ordinance back in 2022 is what we've got to go look at. This has nothing to do with chapter
Except-
60.
It really does make the language.
It sounds like a town attorney thing, doesn't it?
Yes, we talked about it, but still, you guys need to be aware. You're the planning commission, you need to be aware.
Can you bring Dennis in here?
Free one.
Beds.
We're never leaving.
Yeah, somebody call pizza.
No, thank you.
We won't do that anymore. So location of
Residential zone.
That's where you're at.
Yes, location of residential zone is because right now, if you look at the location of residential zone in the zone, the way it's described in the zone, it allows for homes on the north side of Highway 9 to be rezoned residential. You need to look at the location in that zone. It absolutely says that some homes, that lots north of Highway 9 can be rezoned residential.
You don't want homes north of them?
No,
No, to be zoned residential, she's not saying they can't have houses, just be zoned as the residential.
oh, residential is quarter acre lot.
Oh.
I get it.
I see.
And where do we look at that?
The residents, go to the residential zone, whatever chapter that is, 32, whatever chapter, for the residential zone.
What we need is that.
You want that changed to RR.
It used to be just here.
Yeah. you-
This was it, this was grandfathered in as residential zone, and you could not go there, and it even said, there will be no more residential zone anywhere in town. This is it. And then it was changed to say that the lots north of Highway 9, you need to take that language out. Okay.
Yeah,
Request.
what about that?
Okay, we were requested by someone, an engineer, that we need to require floodplain development permits for anything that is built in the floodplain. We, you would think so, you would think so.
I thought you could only build non-human occupied structures like a barn or a state.
Well, then we wouldn't have zoning like because half of that's in the floodplain.
I think RV parks are one of those too, right?
What?
I think you can build an RV park. This is a Army Corps of Engineers, where they,
But they need a floodplain development permit because Zion White Bison right now, they've got locks on every one of the, thing, nobody can dump. Everybody can put, we gave them an occupancy, a certificate of occupancy, but they were required to put a lock on every, thing where an RV would hook up
It's too
because they
gross,
don't have their septic system in.
it's too.
Has
gross.
anyone checked?
So if I
And it's
put here-
because they're in ground, they hit groundwater. They can't get their system in.
Yeah, I think that we screwed up giving them occupancy
Yeah.
because
No,
There's
there's
a
no
difference.
problem with giving them their occupancy. And the thing is, if you,
two drywall screws, they could have it out in 30 seconds.
okay, well,
So, and
okay,
if I was staying there, my black tank was full.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
well, we have, our public works is required to check on it. Okay, so,
I was going to be working on that too.
yes, you were, I believe that is also in what I asked you to do.
Yeah.
And then in the town code, we were requested to review and potentially revise the language regarding floodplain manager. That's in the code, same code. Chapter 13, 22, is that the one that has the geologic?
Yes.
Okay, chapter 22. Okay, then there's the assignment I gave to April, now this next one. This is a recent, and it's gonna have to be resolved fairly soon. There is a request that a 10-foot wall be put down at the end of Water Street between Zion White Bison and the neighboring properties. And I don't believe our code allows for a 10-foot wall.
10 foot high.
10 foot high on top of a 4-foot berm. That would make the whole thing 14 feet high.
High fences will be allowed.
And I already told them, you're gonna have to get planning commission.
Like I can't have a 6 foot in front of my house.
You have to have a permit as well.
I told them that I thought they were gonna put in planning commission and town council to get this, because they want me to approve it, I'm like, I can't approve that.
Wait,
This
did
is why-
they want the,
The neighbors.
It's right down here,
The neighbors.
right down here, but before you get to sign one, they don't wanna look at sign one bison, and they want 10-foot walls. They're gonna have to look
so
at.
they want to build it themselves?
No, they don't sign white bison to build it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Who was gonna do the building and paying?
What?
You don't want to get in detail.
No, I don't want to. I just want you guys to know, this could be coming, this could potentially be a request coming before you guys by the next 2 months.
And now we have a little fence.
Okay, then I put second ingress and egress in neighborhoods after a certain number of homes. And this is because of what happened over across by my house with, all the different developments, and there's no requirement for a second bridge. And there should have been a requirement for a second bridge. The fire department says, unless you put in your code that there is required to be a second egress and egress after a certain number of homes, they get doing it.
And did they give a suggested number of homes?
Yes, we'll have to ask them what that suggested number is. They told me, and I don't remember, this was 2 years ago.
I thought state code was like 30.
No, there is no
They
state
go,
code.
oh.
There is no state code on this. All they do is they follow the International Fire Code. And the International Fire Code can have like up to 2,000 homes before they require a second ingress and egress.
There's no.
I'm telling you, I gotta check it out, and I asked about this. They said, if you want a second ingress and egress after, say, 50 homes, then you need to put it in your code. They will only follow what our code says, or they follow International Fire
Yes, the fire.
Code. I talked to the fire department more than once.
Wow, that's shocking.
No, for their suggested.
I did, but I don't remember. What
That's who.
yeah, that's your choice.
Washington County has one, good one.
Okay, close Pocketville Road. My email, I was explaining to Crystal today. I had my email condensed down to 75 emails that I still needed to take care of. In 1 week, I'm now at 350 emails. And over half of them are pictures of people on Pocketville Road, sending me videos of people flying down Pocketville Road, not caring about the speed bumps, and I'm like, oh. And then, of course, today, there was a whole big thing on Facebook, whole big argument among people about the Pocketville Road. And so I was waiting for a new town council to potentially close Pocketville Road, so we need to discuss that.
But not if it's over 30 houses. You need a second access.
No, this is, well, the closing of Pocketville Road, in my opinion, would be a road, a gate that could be opened in case of emergency. It wouldn't be, yeah, because it's
It's
like,
with the cul-de-sac with the breakaway gate.
yes, a cul-de-sac with a breakaway gate, because like when we had the car accident over here at Columbia Road, they had to go up and around. And when we have the Zion Half Marathon, they go up and around, and so it's fine where you have to open the gate.
Wasn't there also like talk that there was supposed to be a substation, but
Mhm.
at the end of that, so it would be the perfect time at that. time.
Exactly. Yeah, Rocky Mountain Power's gonna put a substation right there. Okay, so adopting the master transportation plan, I only have 2 more and I'm done and moving on to the Bronwyn's list. Adopt the master transportation plan, you guys put that on the public hearing agenda, but
Did you get my text? I did.
no,
My text said, how do we do this? Tell me how we're supposed to write.
I don't have a text. Yeah, I don't have a text from you. Okay. I have had people send me texts and it does not show up. Really? Yeah,
Oh, what? 'cause
yeah,
usually
I'm telling you.
I usually match it with
If I didn't answer, you should check and see if I got it.
All right.
Okay. I have text messages show up a week after somebody sent it. I look down and I'm like, there's a text message. Where'd it come from? Or a voicemail message. And I'm like, I didn't get any of this.
So do I have time to fix that? Because I now don't need.
Well, we will have to, I think it's too late. No, Crystal's already, the things are already done and ready to go on to the public hearing board. They're done.
She could continue.
But you could continue it.
Okay.
You can continue it because even Paul said this is the way, because Paul and I talked about this yesterday. He says, no, this is the way to do it. So John's
But
what
I, thank you. That helps, but I have no idea. Okay. And so.
and I call it transportation element. It's actually the way it is. And I have this here on the general plan of the second purple tab. Says general plan, transportation master plan.
Yeah.
You can see what great transportation master, what great in our recent plan. Woo-hoo.
All right.
And meanwhile, I have the general plan from, 2009 on my computer, and I was just looking at it before it got started. And the circulation element is what they call it. It's like 12 pages long. This one's gonna be a half movie. Look at this.
Right.
I mean, this is 1 1/4 pages, and the previous one was 12 pages long. And you're supposed to adopt a map, which is where you would adopt that map from UDOT. And, so we're supposed to have an attached map. There's no attached map to the current plan because they didn't say anything. It's nothing.
Before you attach that map, like, there are things you change, unless it's just the highway.
It's just the highway.
There are some roads that have been abandoned, that can be changed, that are marked to happen through.
Yeah.
Particularly at this end of town, and there's one thing that's one on this side.
Okay, yeah, let's,
But those have
I'll
been
get
done.
with you on that.
Yeah.
All right. Then I already talked about the emergency ordinance, and I have already received contact for, the billboard ordinance, and the billboard company has already contacted me because the billboard ordinance does not apply to state code. So we need to amend the billboard ordinance to apply to state code.
What
That's-
does it apply to state?
I have not talked to the guy yet, I'm just telling you, I have received contact.
I think. it's one of you.
And I have an entire folder, I told you guys the planning commission meeting the other day, I've already downloaded the state code on billboard law, and I've got a folder with it all, and it's ordinances, all sorts of stuff on state code about billboard. And I went to a seminar on, billboard law in Salt Lake City. Back when I was on town council, the guy leading the seminar was an expert in billboard law, and almost the entire room, other than me, was all lawyers practicing their billboard law. And I sat there and went, oh my gosh, we do not know what billboard law is. So I can tell you, I guarantee we will need to amend the
Yeah,
code.
yeah, there's one
Okay.
little definition we can use where we're, well.
Okay, so anyway, those are my issues, and, I've already told you what I consider the two most important, which is the emergency ordinance and, the ordinance that April's working on. And the others, I don't expect us to finish getting anything in priority tonight, but we've got way too much we're already, an hour into this, and we've only got the money. And so now we've got Robin and yours.
I'll be fast.
Okay.
Okay, so the general plan for the planning commission, that's out there. So that's, I didn't put that on there, but I really think we need to get, the transient lodging issue and all its tentacles handled. We've talked about several things on this list that are either helped, clarified, or covered with, if you covered transient lodging as far as, and the permitting and the complaints and some of the other elements. It will help in a lot of different ways. So I'm gonna send everybody a copy of it, just. But what's holding that up is I need to talk to Heath. I need a 30 minutes to Heath.
Keith is coming to your planning commission meeting. You can talk to Keith at your planning commission. I've asked him to start cutting all planning commission meetings.
I don't know if it all, but we need, I need to be able to.
Attorney?
Yep, he's coming to all your meetings now.
Just reiterate that.
I just thought I'd let you guys know that I have received complaints, from the public, several people in the public, and I've in person and by phone call of people that do feel that the planning commission they're coming to the meetings, they're watching online, some are coming to the meetings, and they're like, what's going on? It seems like it's not organized, and so I've asked Keith to come to be able to report back to me on what he sees for the meetings and what changes we need to make, because I'm getting complaints. And so you, April, how many times you guys, Darlene and April, you guys came to planning commissions all the time, constantly, for the past 2 years, you guys came, and you would sit in the audience, and you felt like you guys were not being listened to. And you know that you did, you felt that, and I don't like having, I do not like having a public hearing and then a vote on the ordinance that you just had the public hearing on, all in one meeting. That implies that you come into the meeting with your mind made up before you listen, and you didn't really listen to what the public had to say, because you go ahead and vote, the public makes their comments, and then you vote. It's like, well, did you listen to what the public said? And when we've been going through all the ordinances back to 1929 to review all the zoning ordinances, and we've been laughing, and we've been laughing at the way they used to do things. Public hearings were on a day, there was nothing but a public hearing. Then, 2 days later, they had the town council meeting or planning commission meeting, whichever the case was, to vote on it. But they had a public hearing all by itself. I'm like, wow, when did that change? When did they start doing a public hearing and then vote all in the same day? That was not the way, even in the nineties, that is not how, they were separate days. And so I don't like public hearing and a vote on the same day. So for example, we have a public hearing coming up on the budget at our April meeting, and then we're gonna have another one in our May meeting. And we're either gonna vote in May or we're gonna vote in June, but we're gonna have 2 public hearings before that. And so, we're not voting in April, but we're having a public hearing on it. And I feel that for a planning commission, you should not be voting the same night. And then so what my point to you guys was, because you guys were coming to the planning commission meetings and feeling like you weren't being heard, what I'm getting with these complaints from people that are coming to me and saying, what's going on? And, I don't like what's happening at the planning commission meetings. The issue gets back to, and then I talk to you guys and I say, how was the planning commission meeting? You guys are like, well, it's fine. And I go, well, why is the public saying it's not fine? Because you guys are saying it's fine. Just a minute, darling. And so the point is that if the public is watching the meeting and they don't have trust in what's happening in the meeting, any more than you guys have trust when you guys are attending the meetings, we have to care what the public thinks. And especially because you have in your thing, Darlene, let's see, how did you put it exactly?
Well, I will get to that when I get to my thing.
But you wanted to care what, oh, there it is, you're coming up next after Farmer. So it matters what the public thinks, we have to consider that. And so that's another reason why I have Heath coming to the meeting, starting with this next meeting, was to see if something needs to be adjusted and why does the public feel that way, so.
And I would also suggest that when council sends us something, there's been several items where we really didn't have an option to do that.
To what?
We really didn't have an option to do that. It was very time sensitive.
Oh, yes, I know, there were
And
codes
those are
that they were not.
basically the only things that have been
The
passed.
only thing that has to think that we've had to put through because
Because
sent from you guys.
at our first
We're trying to get
meeting,
that right now.
at our
Yes, there
first
were-
meeting as a planning commission, that was our goal, was to talk about it and not vote it on at that time. But because of the urgency of those 2 things specifically, we did not have that option.
That's
As long as that's understood as well.
That's understood. Bronwyn and I talked about that when I told her I didn't want you guys to have public hearing and then a vote on the same day. We discussed the fact, because Bronwyn and I agreed to have a meeting once a month to talk about things. We discussed the fact that this particular time should be an exception because we sent you these 2 and we know, we understand what's being asked, but I don't want to see it again, hopefully. And it's not up to me. I'm just telling you what I like and dislike, but as we do the procedures for your meetings, we'll work on that. But I cannot tell you, I myself cannot tell you how to run your meeting, but the town council can.
Currently in the planning commission's, meeting rules and procedures, there is a section that talks on that specific subject.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, look at
Okay.
that and revise it as need be.
Okay,
We have that.
so I just wanted to let you guys know that, I've been getting some complaints from the public. So, okay, go on, balance develop.
For clarification, we have a public hearing, we get public input, we vote on it. What we do is just a recommendation to you, and if you guys are listening to it, 2 more meetings, and you want us to do 2 meetings, if I was somebody that was trying to develop a piece of property and had to wait 6 months before I could get a result, I would be a little upset. It seems like if ours is just a recommendation, it's not like we just passed an ordinance, we're just recommending to you, and you guys discuss.
But did you listen to what, you're the one taking public comment,
Oh.
not us.
Yeah, you take the-
You guys have to listen to the public comment.
absolutely.
Planning commission holds the public meeting. Planning commission is supposed to take those public comments into consideration. It's not that you guys hold the public hearing and then say, oh, well, we recommend this, and you guys can decide about what the public has, have to say. You guys have to take it into consideration, if you do your recommendation, what do you want to say?
I was just gonna say, because there was one time back, one time, something when I was working with, as in Crystal's position, where they would do, they'd have a public meeting, their hearing, then the next month they vote on it. So it's only a 2 month
So there's
period.
no more discussion on the
And
next.
then the following meeting is when the town council would be done in that same month, so it really was only a 2 month process. It wasn't like a 6 month, and it wasn't a delay tactic, it was for the very reason that she's bringing up right now, is that the public, so it's just a thought for you guys to put in your,
And
that in the past, those were some of the things that were done.
just for clarification, I tried to watch the council meeting, last council meeting, but I can get about a third of what goes on because the acoustics are so bad.
Oh, it's-
Yeah.
You're watching the phone, I can hear, so I kind of got a gist of what was going on, but it felt like the two things that we sent, you either voted down or changed,
That's right.
or I thought voted down. One was because the title was wrong. I'm thinking, well, we had the town attorney here who could help us with the legal, because he didn't look at it until you guys got it, and then he said this was wrong, right? And then you had to correct something.
Well, we just changed the title right then and there.
Right, so
We didn't vote it down because the title was.
that was
We
my
just
question.
changed the
Does
title.
it have to be word for word what you guys adopt, or are you allowed to change what we recommend?
We're allowed to change what you guys recommend. We got
Within
state code
reason.
codes, so we
Within
can.
reason.
Yeah, and
If we change it too much,
we have to send it back. to-
if it's a substantial change, we have to send it back. If it's not a substantial change, then we can change it however we want.
So it's just for the public hearing, is why you send it back.
So you were supposed to send back the billboard thing, but that wasn't on the agenda.
We did it, didn't we end up adopting it?
No, but we sent back for them to look at the off premises language. Oh, correct.
And that
we
is,
adopted
There's that-
this name.
So, speaking of protocol, I need to know how things are going to get sent back to me.
We already talked about that before you got
Okay,
here.
well,
So
we
we-
Then we have a planning and zoning procedures meeting, because now we're off of our.
I know, yes, I know.
Just.
I just wanted them to know.
Yeah, it's my turn, I should reclaim my time.
I wanted you guys to know there's a thing. Okay,
Thank
go
you.
on.
Okay, I'll finish my list, but I am going to send, as soon as this meeting's over, I'm gonna send you from our very first meeting, the ordinance protocol, handout that we agreed on as a team, which has all these on there. I'll send it to you just so you know that that's our intention. The circumstances have been out of our control that have made it a chaos, so I'm gonna defend ourselves there, so I'll send you that.
So
Next.
balanced development.
Balanced development, I think that's a priority because, it's a lot said right now, this has to do with commercial development primarily. I think we need to take a look at what we're requiring as far as, other businesses, essential services, et cetera, when we do CUPs, so we're gonna look at that. I think that's a priority because you have to add something other than, vacation rentals or transient lodging, it's better balance for the town. We need, go ahead, what? Go ahead. No. Okay, so my priorities are working on Google, because that's like my focus, right? We need to repair all the giant holes in that. Mine are really general. Protecting natural resources, ridge lines, scenic environment, those are important things just as baseline things with development. I feel so rushed now. So
Go ahead, read it.
so could those be taken care of in the general plans?
So a lot of this will be taken care of in the general plan. I think we need a ridge line and mesa top and slopes ordinance sooner than that. I think we need a balanced development or ordinance before just to balance it out, so we don't have the same thing coming in before we get the general plan done. But yes, all those things should be addressed in the general
I think we
plan.
work with 5 counties, maybe those ordinances, so that when they're in the general and it's seamless.
That's right. Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, so most of my issues will be incorporated into the general plan, but we just need to hit, there's 2 or 3 things, transient lodging, the ridge lines, and a little bit of balanced development, I think we need to have in place as we move forward with the plan.
Okay, and how do you feel that works in with such as issues where we need to work on lighting and the noise, because we're about to have more tourists coming into town, we've got issues with noise and light.
Yeah, I think those are easy things that work.
Okay.
And you gotta remember, I have got your priorities, so now as a council, we'll look at those and decide what to do.
All right, Darlene,
I too put the general plan as the number one priority. I am, disturbed, befuddled by the lack of clarity, accuracy, and consistency in the loop. There are math errors.
I will say this, I think that was deliberate.
What? Oh, I don't know, but I know there's math errors. One that's like the 12 units per acre, but each unit has to be on 4,000 acres, that's 48,000.
Me,
4,000 square feet,
4,000 square feet, but there's only 43,060
560,
square feet. So it should be 10 units, not 12.
10.89.
Yeah, 10.89. And that leads to confusion and animosity. And I am going to encourage a protocol for clear communication between town council and planning and zoning. There's a lot of consternation and confusion and a lot of spinning your wheels happens when that does not take place. And I too, I want to make sure Lulu protects our dark skies and our rural character. And I do make sure that residents' concerns are considered in all that I do. And, I've heard, from people with positive comments about what we've been doing. And I would hope people who have a concern would reach out to us. And, I'd like to foster future commercial and HRZ development, that supports what we already have and protect our watershed, our floodplains, and unique geography of this area. And similarly, build and protect our residential communities while at the same time protecting our watershed, floodplains, and unique geography of the area.
So explain to me what you mean when you say foster future commercial and HRZ development that supports what we have. What do you mean?
When I drive at a time when these establishments should be full, I see a lot of empty lots. And it concerns me to continue to encourage more building of similar things if what we have is not being successful. And I want to make sure that our ordinances and our planning goes back to planning, right?
So this gets over to what I suggested on mine about removing lodging from commercial, just removing it altogether. Because of the 5 projects, we already have so much lodging and we've got 5 projects still in the works. That I think that's enough. I don't think we need to encourage anymore. So is this the kind of thing that what you're talking about, that we already have?
Yes.
This, and we need something else.
And just that development, enhances the quality of life of residents as well as tourists.
So in regard to that, this very last thing that I have in the very last purple tab, I highlighted what is in our general plan. And so what I would like to see, and I was wondering, this came to my mind as I copied this today and highlighted this. I wondered if it would be at all possible in one ordinance to amend the general plan to adopt the transportation plan and remove this sentence. Whether or not that could be done in one ordinance, that instead of 2 separate ordinances. So this goes along with what you're saying about foster future commercial and HRZ that supports what we have. And you're talking about, once we have too much of one thing, well, we have too much of this. And it's time, and this just needs to go away from our general plan, shouldn't be doing it. I was horrified, I said, well, guess what? If this is what the people, the previous general plan, they succeeded.
Yes.
They succeeded.
I don't think I mentioned revisit the CEP chapter because,
Oh, you did.
I think that's a high priority for me.
Okay. What specifically in that?
By the time the public, this goes back to the next thing, make sure residents' concerns are considered. has any input on any CUP, which now all go before planning and zoning, we have little chance of having any impact. And I just think that's a travesty. I've been told that by several people who crafted that. And so like when we get it, we can't really deny it. I've been told by multiple people this. And I'm going, if that is true, then the revision we thought we were doing with the DRC, those two things together, they need to be revisited. Because the public should have a voice before it's a done deal.
Okay,
And I feel like by the time we get it, it's a done deal unless there's some major instructions.
okay, I see. All right. Okay, any more you want to say on your things, okay? So next is Kent. Kent Paul had written to me and said, he actually said he didn't think I needed to even put these in here on my, to talk about today, but I was like, no, this is about what everybody wants to work on, I'm putting it on here. And he told me that these were your issues too, these three, and although it sounds like his third one has already been mentioned by Bronwyn.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
so what would you like to say about?
Paul lied,
What would you like to say about 1 and 2?
not true. I think on Dark Sky, we have, I've talked with you a little bit about moving forward on that, and we're hoping, and looking at May, to be discussing in meetings. I've been in touch with the state, Dark Sky Utah Commissioner, Chairman, as well as a council member who lives in the area. And they're jumping at helping us, of course. And,
So have you invited that one guy we talked about the one guy who wanted to come and do a presentation. Have you talked to him yet?
yes, and he says, give me a date, I'll be there.
Okay,
Can I ask a question? When you guys are considering dark skies, I think this is everyone's considering dark skies. Have you considered asking the fire department and the ambulance service to give us some input?
to get what?
Some input on our dark skies, because safety is a huge priority. I know that there was a fire near my house and they had used this fire hydrant at my house.
Is it
And there
good?
was actually a fire hydrant directly across the street that they could not find, because there's no street lights on that road.
Okay.
So it's just the point of asking them to have input so they can, I'm not saying don't do dark skies.
Well, they should have-
them included in the
they
conversation.
should have a GIS map with all their fire hydrants.
Right, but our fire hydrants are old.
I know, but
Right, but this is what happened and it was there.
Yeah.
So it's just a point of,
And I've discussed that with you too, or
Yeah.
before, and, safety of lighting is ultimate in planning dark sky. It's controversial when we start talking about streetlights. We can see down in the gardens, that people don't want them, there are people that are screaming for them. And they're really struggling with how to deal with that. I think that streetlights are important, and I think they can be done right, but this is a real challenge when we're talking about dark sky and about safety.
that's
Yeah.
what I was saying, if you just let them at the table, they can say, okay, this is how I would see it in your dark skies.
And there are citizens who don't want it, they don't want a streetlight on their street. And I live on one of the streets, and citizens don't want it, and I can respect that. But there are streetlights that can respect that dark sky and still create that safety. You could put some kind of a special light, near fire hydrants, if that was criteria.
Right.
But I think it's all part of it, and I appreciate you giving me that comment, that it is important.
So I've got a question.
Yeah.
Are you putting your dark sky and a lighting ordinance kind of together and combined with
They'll
that?
both have to be coordinated. I think it was the mayor that brought up the issue of string lights, and string lighting that's becoming popular. And if you think George's is bad, look at the people that are starting to do LEDs along the edges of their homes. And
I know, just coming down this street alone, there's a number of houses with those variable string lights that they're gonna have to go.
And so it's becoming a fad and something really popular. So
They just have to go and, they just need to replace them. They can have streetlights, just replace them with the ones that are shielded and down. They have some cute ones, yeah. They have some.
and like I say, we start from a huge advantage. We have dark sky.
And I have seen ordinances in other places where they have something, let's say streamline as an example. And, they actually will put in their ordinance a photo of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And like I've seen one with a sign ordinance over somewhere in California along the beach. And they actually have a picture of what they have as an ideal for a sign. And so I don't see why we couldn't have a picture of what we're talking about, the shielded, street light, because they're such cute ones that they have in Springdale. And I mean, you can find them online, I would have found them online. They're not very expensive, and so we could put a picture in there saying, this is what we're talking about, so nobody can have any question. And then over in our neighborhood in Rio, they have some people who have put in lights outside their house and they're not shielded. They've got glass, but it's clear glass, and the light just goes like this. When the dark sky, it needs to be down and it needs to be completely sealed, and so it only goes down.
I've got a complaint from that new cemetery development, on this image.
Okay, so that's something in your street,
And
in your
it,
light.
and it becomes an issue of the inspectors, the county and the city inspectors who are supposed to be watching those situations, focusing on every little detail,
Mhm.
you know, and
Well, I
instead of
think
just the electrical wiring.
Well, I suggested to some that before their lights went in, I said, you shouldn't do that, you're gonna have to change them and put it in anyway. All right. Okay, HRZ, the zone location on your list.
On HRZ, this is something that I worked on, with the last, town council. There are places in town that have eligibility issues where we put in order, this is eligible for highway resort zone, or this is eligible for this. And it becomes a confusion as, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that I can just go ahead and rezone, or I can do this, or I can do that? Or is it encouraging something that's there? And so we did change some on Cola Terrace Road. We took the eligibility off, up to, I think, close to the city boundary going up Cola Terrace Road on one side. And I just think we have to decide where we want to have eligibility, if we want eligibility to be in there at all. Why can't we just decide to have?
It needs to- Yeah.
And
Okay,
eligibility is encouraging towards something.
yes.
And I can understand somebody wanting to, a leader, a person wanting to try and put that in to encourage something.
Okay, so what I'm gonna put here is that what you need is to maybe remove the eligibility element.
And that's what we did over on Pull-Up Terrace Road.
Okay.
And so there may be areas where, I just don't understand where there would need to be an issue of where eligibility is criteria.
Okay.
Um,
It needs to go in.
On, Ridge and Mesa protection, Bronwyn and I talked about it. I'm passionate about it. I spoke briefly earlier today about, mesas. If there is an iconic place, and everybody who lives in southwestern America, thinks they have the iconic place of mesas. But when you come up the SR9 and you round into the entrance of our canyon, of Zion Canyon, it could corridor. We have as ideally a mesa view as there is, in my opinion. I lived here all my life and run and walked and hiked all over. So I think that here in town, in our boundaries, we have issues where we have to be really careful about accessing Mesa property, what we can put on Mesa property, what can't be put on, what height restrictions, what setbacks. You can't set back a house far enough. And there are some really good examples in the county of developments that have been done. If you want to get a good example along the edge, the ridge lines at Coral Canyon, there's some tremendous examples what can be done if a developer is asked to do and understands the wisdom of what to do. You hardly can tip it twice to see that there's a development with homes there. And then next to it, you can say, oh boy, the contrast of doing it and not doing it is, so it's important to me. And I think if you have any negative approaches or any positive ideas about how we set that, or where we should go look for that kind of ordinance, I'm just gonna go to.
The county has a scenic byway overlay zone ordinance that they recently passed, and I know I sent that out, but that might give you some ideas. If you send me an email, and ask me to forward it to you, and I know some other people have it, but I'll send it to you.
Ken, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you say that there was gonna be a dark sky presentation?
We have not a necessarily presentation, but the Utah, Dark Sky Utah's chairman is asked, and offered to come down and speak to us,
Okay,
as, planning and zoning or county council.
I think that's great. I think public outreach, and education will ease people's minds when
Well,
they learn. I've sat through them before and they're very.
And this really puts a big yes mark on what you just said, that as I talk to them, the people who are actually doing this in town, in cities in the state, they are emphasizing the education side of this, that, we don't want to be acting as some kind of, you know, liberal, environmental, we gotta have dark skies and all that kind of stuff.
It's
That
very
educate-
informative to.
you educate the safety, that Mark, Misty was talking about. We educate how important it is for our children and for our way of life and for animals and everything else, so education. Yes,
So we were talking about maybe that guy showing up in May?
yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so, anything else on your three topics?
No,
Okay, so Paul sent me that he was working on light commercial and depth of commercial, somebody said it's an ordinance he's working on starting. You want to say anything about that, or you think that's good, you think that's good enough?
That's another one.
You didn't know that, Darlene?
No.
Okay. Well, he told me, actually, maybe he told me he just talked to you about it. I misunderstood. Maybe I misunderstood, what you were working on, he just talked to me.
I think there's 4 of us at the table that are working on the same type of.
Yes, you guys need to
Yeah.
stop. So I will tell you with regarding to the depth of the commercial zone. Just one thing, and I just realized this was something I meant to put on my list for you guys, and I didn't, so I'll tell you now. And that is, there is, a state code that talks about when land partitions are done. And that if a land partition is done, and, we have a perfect example of what happened, and we have to amend our town code. So there was a land partition, and it's so here's this commercial. Okay. And we have on our town code, commercial must front Highway 9. So here's a big piece of commercial, this piece was partitioned off, it does not meet our definition of commercial. And they're gonna put a commercial development on there, even though it doesn't meet our definition of commercial, and they're gonna be able to do it. And the state code says that if there is a partition that does not meet the town code, unless the town code says, we do not allow a partition of such a thing, they get their zone.
What do you mean by partition?
Separated off a piece of property and sold it to somebody.
Bought a section.
That happens on a large scale and small scale.
So it's saying there's 11 acres and you pull off 3 and you sell it to somebody, that's a partition.
Oh,
Okay, so the state code says unless your town code has this in it, and that we do not have that in our code. So that's an easy fix, but so this development will go forward, but it does not meet our definition of commercial. So we have to fix that, and I meant to put that on my list, I forgot. So that's what, so where Paul says he's talking about the depth of commercial zone, that's what he's talking about. Because I mentioned this at town council meeting the other day. I've had someone has called me and wants to put parking lots in town. They want to put parking lots for 5,000 cars.
Oh,
I mentioned that, I said 5,000 cars, and I think it went kind of over people's heads. And what he wants to do is he wants to buy a lot of commercial along the highway and put a business in the front and parking in the back. And then they can go past the shuttle that goes into Springdale. And so he's approached me more than once about his wanting to do that. And so if there's the depth of the commercial zone that Paul is talking about, that would have an impact on what this guy wants to do.
right.
And also ordinance about percent of ground that can be covered by non-impervious,
Impermeable surface.
because that's huge out here.
Yeah,
because
and we
that's
used
how
to
we
have
increase the flash floods.
And we used to have that.
Yeah,
Okay. So I just wanted you guys to know about this, this has to do with, partitions, and we have to look at the state code that deals with partitions, and that's where you'll find the language.
Actually, was just looking at that.
Okay, all right, so Valerie,
Well, the first two have already been kind of signs that was on the agenda for public hearing. Can address the lighting, dark sky, the noise and construction hours. My neighbors and I are just kind of tired of being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning with construction going on for month after month after month. So I think that needs to be looked at. We used to have a gun ordinance, we don't anymore. Tired of being woken up before dawn with people hunting on property adjacent to mine.
Do we have an ordinance about when construction can start?
I don't believe we
We
do.
have a note there, it's either 7 or 6 in the morning for businesses, Crystal, do you remember?
Yeah, but there's also the concept, yeah, there's a concrete ordinance, so for exception for concrete.
And is that any time of the day?
Well,
'Cause I thought there
I
was a
believe
lien on
it
that one as
says
well.
if it's too hot.
Yeah, it's an
In the
environment.
summertime, they can do it earlier.
yeah,
But there's limitations on it, like it's summer, not.
Yeah, in the summertime, they can go early if it gets too hot and the concrete sets up, so they can do it
Well, there's
like 3
additives,
in the morning. no
there's
joke, 4 in the
additives
morning.
that can be put into concrete that assists in its setting up.
Yeah, it's actually in the state code.
I know that, but I'm just,
so
this is
we
my
can work
list.
on this.
We have something that just needs to be improved.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, I said, we need to look at it. We need to look at it. Excavation permit fee, I'm like a broken record on this. We used to have an excavation permitting process. That was gotten rid of, and I feel like the town has lost out on probably millions of dollars between White Bison, Labrie, AutoCamp. It's a lot of money, and we just gave it away.
There's also drainages that have been built.
Yes, absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
I know all about those drainages that are built in.
Village cottage commercial, I think that feeds into Paul's light commercial. I'd like to see a lower profile, lower impact, especially surrounding, neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods. You know, more retail or office or,
And that reminds me of why we don't like the big houses. You were wanting to know why about the big houses, what she just said, which is the impact on the surrounding residential neighborhoods. If you have this massive house, it needs to be,
contained.
I think that the county
it needs
dictates
to
that.
fit, it needs to
Right.
fit with the surrounding
Well,
neighborhood.
for example, Larry.
10,000 square foot house in downtown.
Larry.
Because it.
In my neighborhood, someone put in a 14,000 square foot house,
Thank you.
and it looks like a medical center in the middle of our neighborhood. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't think that has anything to do with the character of Virgin. So
So you were talking about low profile, low impact, is that
Commercial
what they
zone,
mean
right.
about the big houses?
I would encourage on that because it's come up several times, and that to me is a higher priority because of my findings. The compromise we made.
Right.
The village commercial,
Yeah.
Right,
all right?
right.
Yeah, because, April has on hers about, Darlene Hall, so we'll put that as number 3, maybe? Okay. Go on.
And then design standards and beautification, I guess beautification is not exactly the best word to describe what I'm talking about, but, and design standards, I don't wanna see of overly strict, design standards, but it would be nice to have something so someone doesn't come in and paint their house magenta or some fluorescent color or.
Well, just so you know, the state code says we cannot, limit color.
But we can suggest.
We can suggest,
So how does
but we
Springfield get
cannot,
away with it?
I think what happens in Springdale, and Springdale knows their code is not enforceable. I think what happens is there are people that come to Burt to Springdale that want so bad to build in Springdale and have a business in Springdale that they'll comply. It's much like Sedona. You look at some of the stuff that goes on in Sedona
Right.
and you look at the McDonald's there that has turquoise
I know,
arches
I know.
instead of golden
Yeah,
arches.
yeah.
You're like, that's how bad McDonald's want to be.
Commercially, we could restrict the, just.
We cannot, the state code will not let us restrict, it's something that comes up at every one of my mayor's meetings, is one particular mayor, it's his bugaboo, and he rants every mayor's meeting
Right.
about
Well,
the
you'll
fact that we
notice-
cannot control this. But I think what happens in Springdale is people want to be there so bad that they're like, okay,
They don't
even though
fight it.
they don't fight it, they
Right.
could, but I think they choose not to because they like the way the town is.
But, and municipalities that have passed or recommend stricter design standards are usually property values kids stay high, you know, people wanna be there because it's lovely and nice. I think we could be in that category.
I think we could too,
Yeah.
if we do it right, because, but at these mayor's meetings where we talk about.
Right,
the
it's
fact that we
tricky.
Cannot, that what they've done at the state level tells us the stuff that you can't do this, you can't do that,
Right.
you can't do this. We sat there at these meetings, we're like, well, then what can we do?
Right.
And it's really, really, really tricky
Right.
to try to find what would work. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna go to April next, since April has her list. April.
Okay, so I kind of set this out, over a year long process. And I was trying to put the most important things, I thought, and not put too many items so that you didn't get overwhelmed and maybe it's manageable. And, I mean, we talked about some other things that I think might be more important than what I have put on my list. So this is, of course, just a guideline, but so I was thinking in the first 3 months, of course, the first thing is the ordinance for size restriction, total square foot, of single family dwelling, and all zones. And, we talked about that, and that's number one for, I guess, everyone, you really need to get on that, you probably will aware of that. And then there's the sign regulations, I'm just saying review and revise the sign regulations, and review the billboard ordinance that we passed the billboard ordinance. And then there was a couple of options that included the, off-premise sign language, so I think we sent it back to the planning and zoning to take another look at that. And then, we talked about rules and procedure for planning and zoning meetings, and that might be helpful with what you're talking about, so maybe the setting it up so that there's no, difficulties with the public, thinking that it was not being managed well, whatever. I think it's fine that we can address that anyway, and then within 6 months to review and recommend or not adopt the master transportation plan, but if we're putting that in with the general plan, and that's just kind of a work in progress, I would say. Review chapter 42, it's got resort zone in it. I don't know, I kind of was surprised, I didn't realize we had a resort zone, that highway resort zone,
So I can tell you that, what happened is the town had a resort zone. Okay. And they allowed RV parks, and this was before even I moved here. They closed it down and said there will be no more resort zone, and they created a highway resort zone. And so the only thing that was in the resort zone was Zion RV Resort, that's it, nothing else. And they shut, there was a sentence in there that said, there will be no more resort zone, this is a defunct zone, blah, blah, blah. And then that language got removed.
So anyway, we need to.
There you have, now you have a resort zone and highway resort zone.
Chapter 60, you talked about that chapter already, I just think that's something that needs to be looked at, I know you're looking at it already, but I just put it in maybe a 6-month time frame and get that resolved. Okay, chapter 8, supplementary and qualifying exceptions mostly, and I don't know, maybe that has to do with height exceptions and this exception and that exception, whatever. And it's just, it is kind of where everything goes if you want to change something that chapter is in the other ordinances and codes. So I don't know if that needs to come from town council, down planning zoning, or you want to.
It could be either way, we could, it's, the way this should work, if somebody on town council has an ordinance that they would like to propose, then bring it to town council, we put it on the agenda, we talk about it, and then we'll send it to planning commission.
Right, it was
If
just.
planning commission has an ordinance they want to work on, then they can work on that.
Right, so that was, I was kind of considering that we might look at that.
You are more than welcome to bring that up. if you want.
I've got 6 months. All right, and then,
Lodging,
lodging, we talked about that. We're not, maybe we need to do them.
I don't know about 5 years, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's open for suggestion. Because then it's been 9 months, it'd be nice if we could have a draft of the general plan. I don't know if that's possible, I mean, probably a draft. And it would be, you know, like while you're putting these other ordinances together, you know, you kind of go drop them. Okay, and then I'm going to review chapter 22, construction subject to geologic flood or other natural hazards. That's why I put maybe town council down, planning and zoning, because looking at all the other, what you're talking about with the slopes and the mesas and all that, that you might be able to. Well, that's not really a hazard, but. Anyway, we'll look at that chapter. Review chapter subject to building or site bonus allowances such as 18.2, 16.2A, and 40.2. I mean, we really need to take a look at those because sometimes they don't really make sense. You might have,
You know, you could probably just remove those. What, you think we should keep bonus allowances?
No, I just, the just removed just scared me, but yes, we do look at those.
so I would be fine if you just removed all that language about bonuses. I mean,
I think that was put in the code, my suspicion, my belief after having been there as long as I have is that at the time when that was put in, we didn't have any businesses. And they were trying to come up with a way to encourage business. Now that we've got it, we don't need any bonus allowances, we've got enough.
well,
That's
some of
my
the
thought.
bonus allowance language is in all these different chapters, just doesn't. It makes it confusing, it makes it difficult, it just.
And isn't that something that could be covered in a development agreement? Those kinds of things?
You mean bonuses?
Yeah.
Yes, that could be covered in a development agreement, but with the language in the zone, it would
Right.
have to say.
Okay,
Any bonus would be as part of a development agreement or something like that. You can't just say, just go off and do a development agreement without that language.
Right.
And we would need something that describes what a development agreement is.
Yes,
Yeah,
So that all
that's right.
Yeah, that's, that would probably be further down the road. You know, it might be important to some developers.
In fact, the new subdivision ordinance that we have to pass by the end of the year, oh, right.
What's news? Tell us quickly.
Oh, this was passed a year ago, this was passed a year ago, but we have, towns were given until December 31st of 2024 to get the new subdivision ordinance passed.
Okay, that's good, we talked about that.
And in that subdivision ordinance from the state, it says, it limits all sorts of things, and says, but a town can do a development agreement that allows blah, 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 blah. So just so you know, that's in the state code about development agreements. All right, so that subdivision ordinance, if we were to take your 369, that, we've got to have that done 9 months from now. So that would go in your 9 months thing. Because we have to have that done by September 31st. It won't take much, there is a draft available, a template of subdivision ordinance, and there's been, what the state did is they put out grants that towns could apply for and have someone write the subdivision ordinance for them, and then it's consulted off and you adopt it. And I did not follow up on any of that. And boy, have I received letters and letters and emails from all the different companies that will do it. And I'm like, no, we'll do it ourselves. Thank you. So I just want you to know that. Okay, that was getting lots of.
You have access to that template, though?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I can print that out. I've got
Put it in our SharePoint.
Okay.
Okay.
Put template in SharePoint.
So then I'm seeing here, 12 left, since we only have 2 minutes left of this meeting. Right? Okay, 12 months, we should be able to finalize the general plan. I think that's kind of on your time frame. And I want to, I know it's not very important, but the master plan overlay district, chapter 56, you know, master plan districts can be a really nice inclusion into it now. I mean, we can do a lot. I've seen some towns like Huntsville and Tahoe did a master plan development, and it's just such a really interesting combination of lodging and little store and outdoor activities for residents.
Mixed use.
And mixed use.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's great. And so, I think that might, we could look at that master plan overlay district and maybe think about doing some kind of a mixed use development, areas. And then, I think we need to review our ordinances all year. There's so much discrepancies and redundancies and problems, but I was hoping that throughout the year, we could maybe go at the end of the year and talk about what we've changed and how we get those discrepancies and redundancies that are going for ordinances. That's my.
There are, I know this has been discussed at one of my mayor meetings, that there's somebody who will do that. There's a company. I cannot, I'll have to ask. I think I know which mayor, it was Mayor Caroline who brought this up, and, I will ask her, I'll see her at when we go to our mid-year conference, she's always there. And I'll ask her about it, that they hired some company that went through and they paid them and they went through and reviews what you're talking about.
Okay.
And it took a while. And it would take, I'm sorry, no, it was not Unicode. No, I'll ask her.
Then the other thing, the last thing I had is just I think we need to address it, the Darlene zone change, we gave, this is what we talked about.
Shirley.
Shirley.
So what is the Shirley Hall zone change?
They agreed, they asked if they could come back and resubmit their zone change.
That's the problem.
Well, they are hoping they can do it for 4 months.
Yes. We gave them 6 months. Yeah. The time frame, so they don't have to come. That's why I had that conversation.
So I would say, I really like your 3 month, 6 month, 12, 9 month, 12 month organization of these. And so just as I've added some stuff to yours with things that need to be added in, I think we could probably take all our different things that we've got as suggestions and fit them into this 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, 12 month format to come up with a prioritization. I think that we can do it that way.
Can Martha and Larry?
Yes. Yes.
Because
So
we've written some down.
you actually sent me an email with your suggestions like 2 months ago. And you did, and I realized today, I never understood it. It's something like 2 months ago.
Well, it's like you're because I was no, that I got thinking about that.
And tell them this almost real quick.
Well, I think that four of us need to get together on the commercial zone, because I've been talking about layers
Yes.
of commercial since I've been in the town. Actually, I've talked about it in planning and zoning. There, I want layers of commercial. I love Village Cottage, that's my biggest one. And I want them in certain parts of town. You don't eliminate lodging, you just put them in a certain place. You say, okay, we can have lodging, but we don't allow it anywhere else, which that's what the HRD was designed for, but that's where it's supposed to happen. So that's mine, and not to go into huge detail, but I do, that is something I was on my priority. The other one is, and it's been in my crop for a long time, is street parking. And it's not just the commercial, it's residential parking, and I feel like it's we have big enough lots that we shouldn't be crowding our already small roads, and it's dangerous for children. So many dogs and animals have been hit, and kids are going to be. Okay, and that was one of mine. The other one that's become a new one recently, and I started writing it, and I need FDA or something, or whatever it is, not FDA, I need more the flight.
Oh,
Plan.
FAA.
Oh, FAA, because, oh my gosh, 4 o'clock in the morning is not the time.
It's
To
constant.
have it. What do you have? There is one particular helicopter that flies, and it's not just my neighborhood, because it's other times of day in other places. I feel like we need, other cities have protection where you can't
I
fly
don't know
over.
where these helicopters.
Oh,
I
all
don't know.
night long, and now the military ones, we can't do anything about those, and actually, safety, I'm glad to see them.
Yeah.
You know,
Who on
but-
earth is flying over Florida?
But where's the, I
Yeah.
have got tracks on that.
Yeah, there's a lot, and they're not just airplanes, or helicopters, there's airplanes. I've had a paraglider try to land in my field, which if they're gonna die, they'll land in my field to save you, but.
We also don't want drones, right?
Right, the drones, it's hard with drones, because there are some people that use them for their business.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult, and they should stick to the street and stay on the river, but not over people's properties. But that's one that's in we could go on and on about that, but it's a long one. And then the other is beautification, and starting with our roads need some serious help.
Well, we're putting that in the budget.
And I would love to see some form of sidewalks through the center. We've already got them. I'd like to see some beautification done on the highway.
That requires a UDOT grant.
Right, but we can
If we're
also
applying for it,
segue
it's planned.
into ours. A lot of the things that everybody's addressed, I don't want to repeat, so I'm just giving some surface things. I've always thought that it would be nice, I want park access at where our river accesses are. I would love to see some picnic tables at the one that we're doing so much work on at the end of my road, or there's an access here, there's also an access over here that would, just for people to have picnics. I'm not talking about the tubers going in and out of, I'm just.
Did you put that in the little survey?
I think it is, and I think it's on my list, I sent you. So, and then, one more I'll come up with, where was it? I had commercial sound, or construction sound written down. And then, I just want us to remember that some of the things we're doing are because we are inundated with commercial. We need to remember that we've got to take care of our residents too, while we're getting enforcement
Amen.
officers. I want that enforcement officer to first hit commercial before he hits any of our residents who can't afford to replace certain things or can't. It's a hard hitting issue, and I just want us to remember we're riding a fine line, because we're supposed to be mediators who say, okay, Bob wants to build a container compound, but Jane doesn't want a container compound next to her home. That's our job, is to step in the middle of that and say, okay, you can have some containers on your property because it's your property. But on our side, Jane doesn't need to see it. But we need to find that fine line, because I don't want us to be a dictatorship. I want us to be inclusive and bring our town together that way. I just got my soapbox, but there it is.
Larry, anything for you? I'll see Martin for last.
I think just about everything I had concerns about, I covered, so I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Martin,
Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything.
yeah, whatever's good.
whatever is different. So the one thing not anybody has mentioned, and I'm actually surprised, is a plan on what we're going to do about water. I have no idea how the vote's gonna go about the water pooling agreement. Nobody knows, nobody has a crystal ball. But what is the plan? Should we not join that? And how are we going to manage our remaining connections? That's huge. And so my next have to do with water as well. We need a backflow cross connection administration program. If one has been established, I'm not aware of it.
I don't believe
But
that.
it's, there's a requirement by the state, and there's an administrative rule supposed to be in place, and it needs to be passed by ordinance.
We have a cross connection ordinance that was passed like in the nineties, still in a, it's,
We
It's
should
old.
revisit that. We need
I
to-
was gonna say, cause I had to pull that out.
We need to get a program in place because that relates to drinking water and safety, and also there could be theft of services. And our water loss for some reason is significantly higher than it's ever been. So
Okay,
that ties into that. We want to make sure we don't have, that water loss there.
so I'm putting revised cross connection ordinance, since we already have one, that's, I know exactly what it is.
Just, okay, well then implementation of the program, maybe.
Okay,
Besides the word.
anything else?
And then I don't know what the town's doing with our construction meters as well. We have some internal controls, policies.
Mhm.
So I just want to make sure, this because of this water loss as well. I have driven around town and I've seen construction meters that are not the town. So,
Oh, people are bringing them in from somewhere else, how do you know they're not the towns? Are they have something on them that tells you?
Marcy knows things.
Marcy knows. Is it not color? I mean, what's telling you that it's not?
we don't have to get into that. The other thing is that nobody's talked much about is parks. Falls Park is something that the public has asked about and why nobody has done anything or made any improvements. It used to be maintained by the town. I don't know that that's still happening. I'm wondering what that lease agreement with the BLM
I
looks like.
think it's expired, we'll have to see.
No.
I think it expired, I don't think it's our town responsibility.
We can probably talk to Shauna Dow about that.
Part of the road is private, entering into it, that's
Yeah.
case finance as well.
But yeah,
So
just
just
overall
overall
improvement of parks and maintaining of them, post plan, Paul has tried to get going. And sorry, did you have a question?
But that has
No, I
nothing
was
to do with the land use ordinance that the town, the planning commission is gonna work on. We're talking about land use ordinance.
No, I know, but I was just letting her know that.
The post plans along with land use ordinance, that's just a plan, a study we're gonna do.
Did did I misunderstand? Is that all we're supposed to be talking about tonight?
Well, this is planning commission and town council
Okay,
working on, goals
Okay,
and how we would prioritize. So I was thinking of land use ordinances, but I would have liked down to say it though.
The big picture though helps us, if we know the other things that you guys are.
the other thing is, the complaints policy and procedures and the responsibilities and roles.
That's the town, that's administration, that's not to do with planning commission.
Okay.
We can work
I'll
on
just,
policy,
I'll
but
stop,
that'd be,
I'll
that'd be,
stop right there.
yes.
Can I have one more minute,
Okay.
one more item?
Okay.
Does involve planning and zoning. As we talk about through the SR 9, street plan, we have to do quickly. I have some real concerns about how, the traffic and the attitude certain types of drivers in the canyon have for the safety of our citizens. And I'm going to give an example that happened last night, at dark. A citizen was coming east on SR 9 through town. They stopped at Pocketville in the turn lane to turn on to Pocketville. Dark, everybody's lights on, and as you know, there's kind of a blind spot as cars are coming from the park. And as the as our speed sign starts to slow it from 65 to 45. And this resident was getting ready, she had a car coming, she was getting ready to turn left, signaling, waiting for that car. Two cars behind it, pulled around into the turn lane that would normally take you down Mill Street. No, 70 East, Shirley Street. Two cars following each other, speeding as fast as they could speed, came down around that car that was coming down the road. Right into this lady that was trying to turn. They both had to turn to their left, around in the opposite, around in the other direction. Fortunately, there were no cars coming. And they pulled back into the westbound lane.
And what do you want us to do?
Good question.
Why are you bringing this
Yeah.
up? Because what,
Good question.
planning commission, town council.
I have we talked about calming, we talked about, the state has talked about moving the traffic through. We have all these kinds of things that we talked about, businesses having their in and outs and their roads. But are we putting our citizens' safety first? I don't think it's the vacationer that
You don't
did that
think-
last night. It wasn't people from out of state. They don't cross those yellow lines in the dark. These were citizens who live in this canyon or work in this canyon.
So here's how we resolve this.
Okay, I've got some solutions, but I'd like to hear yours.
Adopt the master transportation plan on Highway 9 so that we can then go apply for UDOT funds so that we can put it in place.
And my comment to that is the master plan draws some really nice yellow lines that anybody speeding can continue to cross because, and they're not gonna care about the calm.
But it's up to us if we want to put those things in for left turns.
Island turn.
That's
Right.
those island things.
Right.
That was something that was suggested by.
That's the only way you're going to stop that kind of illegal traffic that is driving is to put in raised turn lanes. And they won't cross those, but they will cross the yellow lines and kill you.
And the consultant talked about that in his plan. Yeah. It's in there.
I think what he mentioned was that if you were building a city from scratch, those make a lot of sense. But when you have 60 driveways that come onto the 9, that you would eliminate access to by putting those in with a left turn only lane or single left turn lane was like the only solution in a town that's 100 years old because
And they talked about that. When we had the big meetings with master transportation, with the consultant, and UDOT and everything for these, and they talked about these islands, like you're talking about. We did discuss how to do this if you've got all these driveways that have been around for 100 years. And all of a sudden, somebody's coming, and they can't turn left the way they did for 100 years. Well, nobody here has been turning left for 100 years, but, you know, that it's been there for 100 years. And so there was a discussion, what do we do? And we never did come up with a solution, because there is no solution. Roundabouts.
But there are solutions, and I think the UDOT can tell us some of those solutions. Let's take the example that I just gave. I can't remember his name right now, but lives just down from Pocketville. Was on, Dan. So Dan needs to come out headed somewhere, and up Canyon. Okay, and if there's raised islands, he can't turn like he has been.
If we put raised islands, they would only be between Pocketville and Sheep Ridge Road. They would not go any further than that. That's from what the consultant was talking about. It would only be from there to there. It would not be from one end of town to the other end of town.
Well, I would have an opposite opinion and don't want to have a discussion about that, but Dan would have to come out. And he'd have to go west for a few feet and to get into that turn lane to do a U-turn that would be safe. And there are ways to solve that if we care about the citizens first and their safety rather than the convenience of, and here's the big convenience of not paying the money, because it's expensive to put in the raised turn.
Okay, so that was a topic that they talked about. And, in that study that they did with the master transportation plan. And they ultimately, with what they gave us, that they showed at the open house, did not have those in there because of all the pre-existing driveways that they're just, it was like, what are you gonna do for all these people that have turned left for 25, 30 years, all of a sudden, there's this block, they're blocked, and they can't do this, and all the complaints that happen. So they basically said, here's some suggestions, you guys decide. And
I think
there it is.
Can I,
700 West and
Oh, yeah, they,
Coffeyville, those two intersections are.
Well, Dalton Wash is a problem too, with those turning lanes in there.
and they got that on there, that's on there,
Yeah,
yeah.
next time you guys come through Hurricane, see if it slowed those people down any between the new Maverick and the Laverne and Maverick, the things right, over the bridge.
Yeah,
They have not slowed, I drive down now, ripping my steering wheel, because honestly, it is not slowed anybody down. It's created more of a hazard for especially older folk who go 40, and that's their speed no matter what, dirt road, whatever, 40 is what they hit. It's created an issue. It is not just as, I don't think it's gonna help all that much. So all you do is transfer the speed to one lane, and you've got people that don't know what to do when they get there.
There is a pervasive attitude in the country about speeding, and in Utah, it seems like in particular, crazy speed limits. Another option the other big option is enforcement. And I just don't think the sheriff's department has been able to really get there and do the enforcement like Springdale did. So,
are we getting a little bogged down in details? people?
yeah. I just want to say one thing before we go on,
Yeah.
before we close. When you guys have your votes,
They're here, not here.
okay, I have one thing I want to say before we adjourn. And I was gonna say this earlier, and then I forgot, and then something Marcy said made me think about it. When you were talking to the complaint policy. When you guys do the public hearing for the code compliance officer, you're gonna get a lot of people coming in and saying, well, we don't want the code compliance officer to do this. We don't want them to do that. That is not the issue. That is not planning commission's issue. All we're doing with this code compliance officer ordinance is separating the code compliance job from the zoning administrator job. All we're doing is making it 2 positions instead of 1. That's all the ordinance is doing. So when people are coming in, because they're gonna say, well, I don't want them to drive around town and do this. Why are we already have a code compliance officer, we already have, the job is already, it's not a new position. All we're doing is we're separating them.
Yeah, just make
But
that
you're gonna
clear.
get a lot of people coming in and making complaints about what the code compliance officer should and should not do. And that is not the issue that's before planning commission. It's merely separating them into 2 different jobs. That's it. But what happens with the policy, which is what Marcy's talking about, will happen elsewhere. That's not the planning commission's issue. It's simply, so just be prepared when the people come up, that's not what is in front of you. It's merely separating it into 2
But
different.
that's something that we can, bring forward before people get up to speak. To
Yes,
let them
yes.
know, this is what this is about, it's not about.
Correct. You can do that as you introduce the topic of the public hearing, you can make it clear before that that's all this is,
Okay.
but you're still gonna get the people that are gonna say, I don't want to drive around looking for something just like this. No, they're gonna do it.
Well, then
So
maybe after public comment, you could make that statement again, to what you're doing.
And the complaints portion I was referring to it's in Hulu, it's in
Where?
2.22 under enforcement.
Where?
It's in 2.22.
Okay,
The inaction, the administration, the written part of it is. Right.
right, that's where,
The action taken is administrative, but everybody that we actually have an ordinance. It's
That's-
in the ordinance.
okay, but what I'm saying is,
Anyway, I think it needs some work. There's a lot of responsibility on the clerk and the way that it's currently written, and
Oh, yeah, there's
I don't
all
think
sorts
that's
of things
fair.
like, I definitely agree, there's some things like that that need to get changed.
Yeah, I understand back in the day that it made sense. When there
Not
was
much.
only two people.
She does not.
Well, do you think that this ordinance that I proposed with the code compliance officer needs some modification to address the thing that you're talking about?
I have a bunch of notes, I don't have them with me on that.
So you could just talk to the planning commission, because we've already sent it to them, it's going on their agenda for public hearing. So I would say if you could make some notes or whatever it is and send it to the planning commission so they could, because they can amend what we sent. It's not where I send the ordinance and you guys have to pass it without any changes. If you guys want to recommend changes, you can recommend changes. Just like when we get an ordinance from you guys, we can make changes.
So
If you get an ordinance from us, you guys can make changes.
if we change it too much, has to be public hearing, right?
Yes.
And then the 3 items we're hearing, we won't vote on until next month.
That would be my preference. But as I said, I myself cannot tell you what to do. I do not have that authority.
In our plan.
I'm glad I know that.
Okay, shall we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I third.